It's like a fair weather Catholic, you know? It's slow. Okay, all right, thank you. It's, you know, everything's weather dependent. Ooh, I'm sorry.
Hey.
Hello, Mr. Marks.
Richard Marks. Your marks get
How's
set
this overhead thing work?
and go.
Oh, it won't work. You can't put the, if you put the projector on, they can't hear at home. It has to be on a, I have to put it on the Zippy, that's why I didn't do that. You have to send it to me electronically. They all won't work.
Okay, one of these yours? Because I have 2 copies in the same stack.
Could be.
Okay.
Yeah, I put it to the
If you
side.
can sign, I don't know, because I've already got everything started, I don't know if you can sign in. I had no one here for my team.
Don't take off.
Well, I guess we can make copies of the stuff.
No, I can't now, I have to start.
Okay.
I have to ask you to do something. There's one assignment, I can't mess it up.
She does.
You can use my copier.
Okay.
If it doesn't go very fast, how many are you making?
You can scan it on a copier on the thumb drive.
Yeah, if you scan it, we can put it on.
You want me to do it for you, Rich?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Like it's 4:31.
Okay, Beth, I guess we need to start, don't we? All right. I'd like
Actually, open the
to,
meeting and then just wait for Richard.
yes, we can do
The
that.
agenda items first if you want.
We can do that. Okay, I'd like to call to order this June meeting of the Finance and Budget Committee. Roll call
Counselor Kelly?
here.
Counselor Ensel?
Here.
Counselor Dowdle?
Here.
Counselor Armstrong?
Here.
I'd like to invite members of the public to come comment on anything to do with finance and budget. Seeing no one, we'll move on. We're going to switch things around a little bit today, and normally we would have a report from Richard Marks, our city chamberlain now, but we will move on to the agenda items which are brought forward from the departments to be approved by committee and recommended to council. So, number 1, request from the Assistant Superintendent of Public Works to revise the 2018 capital expenditure plan by reducing the planned spending for the South Peru Street Road rehabilitation from $460,000 to $190,000 and increase the miscellaneous paving planned spending from $100,000 to $370,000. Shall I continue, or would you like to have discussion?
Yeah,
Um,
you go ahead.
I just wanted to go over the miscellaneous paving plan that would be increased by $270,000. That would be to cover Broad and Veterans.
Broad and veterans, and then we'll see where we stand with that account, and then we can move on
To Cornelia? Okay.
And then whatever else we'll
Okay.
earmark.
Okay.
Because I keep
Yeah.
hearing Cornelia, and I just wanted to check and make sure that
Would you refresh-
that's what was discussed.
Would you refresh my memory? Did you reduce the length of the project for South Peru,
We
or
actually increased it.
you increased? Okay, so what accounts for your ability to reduce the amount?
We took a look at the existing storm drainage. We made some improvements to the storm drainage system in-house. Added catch basin, cleaned some old storm lines that hadn't been cleaned in years. We went ahead and we're gonna perform, rather than hire a consultant to engineer this, we already had a baseline survey to work off of. So we saved a lot of engineering costs, and we're gonna use county contract to our advantage and
Okay,
surface it.
thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions on item number 1? Item number 2, request from the City Chamberlain, a contract number 2018-02, Main Road Reconstruction, Dakota Street to Kansas Avenue, be awarded to Real Construction Company Incorporated for the bid price of $1,920,000. Funding for the project is being provided under a capital project resolution adopted by the Common Council on June 1, 2017, establishing capital project H5110.62 in the amount of $2,495,000. Any questions or concerns on that resolution? I have a question. How were we able to get this work done for $1,920,000 when a year ago we thought it would cost $2.4 million?
The 2.4 million, you're gonna have to write a purchase order for asphalt. Typically, the city purchases the asphalt materials for the road surface themselves, county contract. So it'll be another $200,000 plus or minus, depending on asphalt escalator.
I just want to see.
It's that 2.4. Also, some miscellaneous testing, compaction, surfaces, so that will have to be hired out, probably less than $20,000. Also, if you do encounter some unforeseen conditions that require the assistance of a consulting engineer, there's some costs in there.
Okay,
So there's a nice little buffer
Yeah.
to case
Okay.
there are overruns.
We
Yeah.
should be able to turn back quicker than that money.
so yes, it sounds like there is a possibility that'll come in under budget.
Yes, sir.
That would be nice.
And the clerk of the works figures into that price as well?
We actually have, in our operating budget, have a salary already figured.
And originally, it was estimated about $1,360,000, then it dropped to $1,120,000, but then it went up almost $700,000.
I'm not sure where the original baseline numbers came from, because those were generated by the previous city engineer.
Right.
Okay? I do know that the project that was bid last year, last fall, the guy get performed was for the complete reconstruction of main roads from all of the south and north end down to Florida.
You again.
Right.
So we reduced the scope down. Thank you. And I think that's where you're seeing some difference there.
You also have to make sure that you include the water, 680,000 is now included in your $1,920,000.
Bid is accepted?
The water line is in the $1,920,000.
Correct. Whereas that was a separate item.
So that's not an additional expense, that's already in the 1.9, okay.
Because we had some previous discussion that it came in so much higher, or was the original estimate so much lower that it was actually out of whack to have such a low estimate?
My best guess, and this is just a guess, a little bit of both. I mean, you might have had a bad estimate, but you also, it was very late in the construction season, people were busy.
Okay. Late in the construction business to put the bid out?
It was late in the season to put the project out to bid, and when people are busy, prices go up.
Right, and was it surprising only two companies bid, one out of Troy and one out of Tycon Road? The scope of such a project, is it, I'm wondering if it's just, is that average, two bidders, or?
Two bidder, it's not out of the ordinary, we'd like to see more bidders, but the engineer's estimate, it fell within the range of the engineer's estimate, which I believe was 189.
Right, and actually both bids were pretty neck and neck.
Very close, yes.
Okay, and went out to bid late, why? Do we know?
The original project went out to bid, yes, the north-south section that we bid last year, this year's project again now, we're just growing pains of the infrastructure committee, that's all.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions or concerns on
I
item number
guess,
2?
yeah, you mentioned that it was late in the bid process. When technically, I guess for future planning purposes, when technically
Construction
should,
season in North Country Shut is April 15th.
okay, but as far as sending out or asking proposals for bids and then actually opening and awarding the bid,
You should be doing it in January, February. That would be ideal, but we know, in the construction industry, that's always not the case. There's a cycle. Everyone wants to work for the spring, and they'll get full up, and then they'll bid again until the summer to the end of the year. So this is gonna be, probably it's a little bit longer than what you touch job, and it should be complex, but scope wise, it's a pretty lengthy scope. But earthwork contractor, that's normal. That's how they would do it. They fill up for spring work, and they try to fill it back into the schedule. And it'll work until, best case scenario, Christmas, then ground gets hard. So the sooner we can get these jobs out to bid and get prices, the better, because they're gonna be more aggressive to get work to start the year.
I guess my question would be, if we sent things out for bid early in the season, and we're agreeable to have the work done maybe later on in the season, would it be advantageous as far as, I guess, the bid as far as what the bids would come in at?
Yes, you can. A contractor will always want the longest schedule possible. But you need to give a definite end date. There needs to be a final completion, not a substantial, but a final completion. We want our roads buttoned up by Thanksgiving the latest. Okay? That's the way it needs to be. Now, if they do it in 2 months instead of a 6-month span, and we know that works out fine. Obviously, we want to limit the amount of inconvenience to the public. And a road job is tricky, when it comes to that. So I would, get it out there early, give them an opportunity to bid it, and we will decide, obviously, based on traffic patterns. If it's a high volume street, we might want to compress that schedule down and get them in and get them out. If it's main road south, it's really not a lot of heavy traffic going through there. It's just a residential area. So that one there, we can sort of stretch this out a little bit and work with, just make sure we work with the homeowners, get them in and out.
Thank you.
Are you asking why the bids went out a little bit late this year?
No, I'm
Last
just,
year?
actually for my own purposes, as far as what, in the future, when we may be,
It really comes down to the contractor's workload. I can tell you right now, contractors in the North Country are extremely busy. Everyone has a lot of work. That's why you're seeing both bidders are bidding in the area typically. But the normal people, the local people did not bid because they're all full.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, let's move on to number 3, which is a request from the city chamberlain to revise capital project H5110.62, 2017 street resurfacing for a revision in the total cost of the main road south project item, as well as funding sources for the project by adding the water infrastructure work to be performed and to reallocate the usage of the city's CHIPS funding to provide for additional miscellaneous paving.
Sounds good to me.
Any questions there?
That sounded confusing.
You thought it sounded confusing?
Yeah, I know it.
Oh, no, I'm in trouble then.
Did you do that on purpose?
No,
or-
but the real difference is adding the 680,000 to this capital.
Yeah, I read
project.
that, that's why.
We didn't have it included anywhere last year.
Yeah.
Right.
We did this project, started it last year for $2,495,000.
Oh,
Okay,
So, because I read my backup
But also Mike
information.
wanted to reallocate the chips, excuse me, go ahead.
No, I was joking with you. Because I read my backup information, it made perfect sense.
I thought you always did.
Just clarifying that in this case, that was the reason
Yeah.
why. It was
So
so
this is-
clear.
It's a revision to last year's project that was established.
Item
Early
nu-
in the year, about June, same timeframe as this.
yeah. Item number 4 is a matter we've discussed before, I believe, in executive session. So I'm not going to read it. the council members can read it in its entirety if they wish. Are there any questions or concerns about that particular item for the agenda? Okay,
Seems pretty
I'll
clear to
take that
me.
as a no. And Mr. Marks, we're gonna go back to the part of the, I assume, by your discussion and agreement today that all of these items are okay to move to the regular common council agenda?
So moved.
Comfortable?
Or it has to be supposed to. First by Kelly and second by Armstrong.
No, he
I-
first, second.
So first is Ensel.
Yep.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Okay, Mr. Marks, we'll go back to item number 2 on the agenda, which is a report from our department representatives, which in this case is you. So,
Okay.
we'll let you
I
continue.
gave out some copies. I guess next time I'll make sure I email them to Beth so we can put them up on the screen.
On this.
But I just did these pretty late in the day. I gave out, there was a question about the healthcare costs, so I gave out the analysis of where we are, period 6 to period 6 comparison. And we're 622,000 ahead of last year, in other words, lower spending. Now, obviously, last year's period 6 is a full month of June, and this year's is still just, June through today, through this week's spending. Obviously, you can look line by line, you can see the general fund is 2,181,000 versus 1,790 in column, let's say 3 versus column 7. 2017 actual, 2018 actual is what we're comparing. So in some cases, we have lower usage, lower experience, but also we have fewer people. The fewer people shows up dramatically in fund number 2, where it's 41,000 last year versus 10,000 this year.
That's rec complex, right?
Right complex, yes.
Okay.
It also shows up, as a difference in parking funds. 2,500 last year, 4,200 this year, full-time person this year versus partial last year.
Okay.
So the trend, I think, is the major driver of our savings so far. And of course, it's always best to look at these things at period end. The next set of reports that I generated was the cost savings for the departments that were consolidated last year. And it shows period 6. We're still $250,000 ahead of last year at this time. Once again, though, the first column is 2017 actual full month versus 2018 column 4 of the data is month to date, or year to date for the month to date timeframe for June. So you can look line by line and see where we're spending less than last year or more than last year. One that just jumps out at you right away on page 1 is we budgeted $6,500 for contract services. In assessment, we're at $16,000, and that's for Article 78 legal fees. It's running higher than budget. We'll have to do a budget adjustment to speed that up.
Okay.
Those kind of things are comparative. Go down to the system IT. We left the POs out there for $38,403, and they actually were used this year to buy equipment. Brian's installed a new network. So that's a wash. But once again, it's higher than last year's technical equipment and spending, so it's a difference from this year to last year.
Okay.
So these were the departments that were consolidated. And also, these are departments that have had additional personnel added to them, such as parks and beautification. Rec complex admin at the very end of it has had people taken away. The 4 parks, Penfield, South End, Blumet, and South Acres, they have had additional costs put in that was taken out of the recreation budget that's just above, that shows all zeros. So once again, it's just a matter of comparing these to see where we stand at each month end versus our savings. It's a little bit down from last month. We compared mid-month last month, and it was 259,000 ahead. We're down to about 245, but it's still $250,000 ahead. haven't had a chance to do the May report with the bar graphs and the expense comparisons. So I'm gonna get that finished and out to you guys next week.
Okay.
You might just wait and do the June report all at one time, huh, and skip a month? Would that
Well,
make
it's easier for continuity to do a month and then keep on, rolling forward. So I'll get that out Monday or Tuesday.
Okay.
Now, another report that the mayor had me take a look at today, which we also have a copy of, is our example calculation for fiscal stress measuring that the state does for the city of Plattsburgh. And it shows our calculations, the actual calculations for 2014, 15, and 16 in the first 3 data columns. And at the bottom of those, on that second page for that report, it shows we had no designation for those 3 years, running at 41.3% was the state's measurement, which left us just under susceptible to stress at 45%. However, based on 2017's actual ending results from the figures that were compiled for the AUD, we're now under moderate fiscal stress being measured by the state at 64.2%, just 0.8% less than significant fiscal stress. The big difference is the recognition of the cash and investments. We've got our sewer and our water fund cash in the right places for the reserves. We did that at the end of last year to establish the reserves for capital spending. That cash remaining in the operating funds kept us from having any susceptible stress or measurable stress, because the state considers that cash available in your balance sheet. However, you can't really use it, because using $6 million worth of operating sewer funds is against the law. Sewer rents are to be used for sewer purposes, period, so we can never use that. Internal borrowing, yes, but not necessarily acceptable. Anyway, so the calculation is much different. Obviously, our fund balance is way down. That's the top figure, $351,380. That's our $236,000 of available fund balance, plus the encumbrances or POs are rolled forward from 2017 to 2018, $115,303. So you can see how the numbers have changed from 16 to 17 on that line, and on the total fund balance line, then obviously down on the cash and investments line. And that makes the difference from us being no designation to under moderate fiscal stress. I think it's a much more accurate measure for 17.
Now, you said that the, was it 6,240,000 in 2016? That included sewer fund?
Yeah, well, that line includes the general fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund.
Okay.
Or so-called combined funds, enterprise funds, let's say, operating funds. They don't
Okay.
consider rec complex, library, or debt service funds in these analyses.
Okay.
Because there's no revenue content to those specific to anything else but the general fund funding. So those fund balances were much higher because of the level of cash that was remaining in the sewer fund for many years
Okay.
in the operating cash.
In the operating, and that has been since moved to a reserve fund?
4.6 million was moved at the end of last year to a capital reserve, to establish reserve for spending on improvements at the pollution control plant.
Okay.
As you know, you're in the process of approving some of those plans are going forward. You bought the new dryer system recently, so I think
Yes.
this is more honest accounting to allocate those funds.
Yes. Okay.
Another thing I might add too is in the weightings, there's a big complicated formulas behind these relatively simple numbers, 2, 3, 3, etc. Big long formula. And for instance, with one of the formulas, it asks what your fund balance is as a percentage of your expenditures. And it kind of penalizes you as that fund balance goes down. the penalties start at about 20% fund balance, which obviously is our long-term goal to get somewhere, get to eventually. Then it penalizes you still further, around 10 or 12%, and then penalizes you if you're 6%. Doesn't go down to like the 1% or whatever we're at. If it did, we'd probably have more penalty there, and there's other cities, by the way, put this in perspective, there's cities that are pretty close to zero in this. There's only 2 cities that have a worse fiscal stress score than the one we have right now. And
Well, the state has helped some cities that have had
that's right.
low fiscal, that they've come in and given them a little influx of money to help straighten out their.
That's right, and as you know, with the Financial Restructuring Board, one of the reasons we're receiving that $4.6 million eventually of funds, hopefully for restructuring. And as we know, some of the costs of restructuring last year and the finance move are being reimbursed from that fund. That $4.6 million is there because they've recognized we're a city moving towards fiscal stress. It may be the case that there'll be more funds available. For instance, the Restore New York grant for the demolition of the MLD building as a no designation city, but based on our scores last year, we were eligible for $1 million. If we were in this category that looks like we'll be in this year, we've been eligible for at least $5 million. So grants also are tied to our measure. So this is troubling because we're only in a handful of cities in this category, but hopefully it'll give us access to some resources in the future as well to begin the rebuilding process.
Page 2 is the scoring of the page 1 data. You can see how it's changed from 16 to 17. Total raw scores gone from 8 up to 14. Weighted scores gone from 11.96 to 18.61. And you can see the captions above. We had zeros in the cash ratio sections for 3 prior years, and now we have scores of 3. So.
And one more thing to the council's credit, if we hadn't done the changes last year, our stress would even be far higher yet. There may be only one city in it with a higher stress level than us had we not done all the work last year. And hopefully continuing through the work this year to make sure we can reduce this in the future.
Included with this report are some graphs that dramatically show some of the aspect of our fiscal stress. One of them that I recall in particular was a chart that shows our ratio of fund balance to total funds, or total spending, and we're low, and we're not the lowest, but we're below average, and that's a concern. And of course, we want to try to bring that up. So I've asked Mr. Marks if he will work with Peter and I next month at his earliest convenience, and let's put together a presentation for the council to show all this stuff graphically and dramatically, and also address year-to-date for half the year through June at our next finance meeting, which will be the 3rd week in July. So let's try to get together sometime before then. Mr. Mayor, I would ask if we could do that.
That'd be ideal. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions?
Thanks, Richard.
Okay.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, Richard.
Oh, I did want to mention one thing about Richard's department, and that is that on top of all this other marvelous work that he's done for us, he's just finished the state controller's audit, and that came out famously, I think. I think we're going to be fine on that. The official results will come out early next month, as I understand.
Yeah, the report, I submitted it yesterday. It is late, and it was a little bit of a chore finding a lot of the information, but we'll see if they send the AUD police to lock me up. I don't know that they will, but they should review the results, and then they'll get back to us with any questions, and once they accept it, then they're going to make the report public.
Okay,
And it usually takes about a month to execute that.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And then they do that comparison sometime around September where they compare all the various cities and villages and see where we stack up versus others.
And they'll send us the new stress calculation.
Yeah.
So it should be the same, because I've used the same numbers that they would. 95% sure that I have them the same.
So I know that you're working a little bit short-staffed in your department, Richard, which requires a lot more effort on your part and your people's part, so we thank you for that.
We're getting there. We're building back up. We're making a comeback.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Wait, can I just mention one of the reports that we did receive from Richard also? I believe it came from you, Richard. And that's the overtime expenditures year-to-date with the variances. It looks like at this point, we're currently $223,000 over our overtime spending from where we should be at this point in the year. And I'm just concerned if that trend continues, that a lot of the savings that we've had, all this work is gonna be eaten away.
We're over by how much, did you say?
223,000
223, yes.
on the variance for year-to-date.
Do you
I
have
don't
any?
know, I don't know if there's, you know, I don't wanna say, you know, and I'm sure there are some justifiable reasons for it, but I'm also concerned that if that continues and a lot of the savings, a lot of the moves that we've done to save money will go by the board.
Could happen. Do you have any suggestions for us, Peter, what maybe we should do to assess or act on this?
I mean, I'm just looking and it looks like, I mean, every department is over at this point, certainly some more than others. And I'm not, and by no means am I saying that, that it's not justifiable. By no means am I saying that, but I'm just saying it's something I think we really need to look at.
Well, how do we do that, though? I mean, in what fashion do we analyze it? Do we ask for a written breakdown of the overages? I mean, I don't know what's reasonable or what your objectives are. I mean,
I'm just,
it would
because this is the
take-
first I've seen it.
I know,
that's-
but don't ask the question. We gotta figure out if, and it seems reasonable question, Peter, but just, we would need to pursue it, we would need to figure out a means by which to do it. And I don't know, do you have any suggestions, Chamberlain Marks? How you arrive at some kind of analysis that, through which you could try to get things under control? I don't know.
Is it public safety next week? Could we ask for a
It
report
is.
of public safety?
We talked about this, I think, at the last public safety. It was addressed why one particular department was high, and there was thoughts it would then start curtailing. I don't think the other departments were then discussed because we didn't have these kind of numbers, but now we do. And I would be interested to know, too, are we spending money to save money? Because we have so many vacancies in possibly the top two departments.
One thing I was just gonna mention, it's probably important to look at the head count this year versus last year to see if the overtime is compensating for a reduced amount of heads.
Right, and also,
That's probably true in the police department, somewhat in the fire department, but then again, could be fire chief, fire department, we've had a few.
right,
MLD, I believe, has had some emergencies. They might have some overtime that's gonna get reimbursed too for covering
Right.
for out-of-town emergencies. So there's a lot of variables that we can look at.
as is the police department gets reimbursed as well for some of their overtime.
Yes.
Yes,
We've got
depending on
reimbursement for,
DEA.
4,500 this week for their police academy work.
Okay,
So, yeah, there's police fees that are due to come in for some of their overtime as well. And, you know, they get some for the school district.
right.
Now,
And also
can
drug
I ask you,
enforcement.
Richard, though, when that money comes in, is that written off of this amount?
No.
So then this
Recognized-
could be,
it's recognized
this could
as
be actually an inflated amount
Right.
that misrepresents I mean, it's what we've
wouldn't
spent,
say
but,
misrepresents.
but what I'm saying is, it shows what we've spent, but it doesn't indicate what we've received back in payment, which would offset some of that variance.
Yep.
Or saved in salary and benefits from the lower staff levels. So I think
Right.
that I wouldn't want our department heads to hazard a guess on this. Maybe next week they can do some analysis and really inform us on that. Would that be all right? Primarily the public safety department heads, I'm presuming, next week.
And I also be interesting to see, once you break it down to, say if it was related to incidents, as you reported fires, bus things,
Yeah.
and is the overtime going to two titles within departments, or is it equally spread out, or where's the concentration? To see where that's going.
A lot of the recoveries that we get, we have to count as revenue. We can't
Right,
reduce against expense.
right.
Some reimbursements we can credit directly
Yep.
against expense. So, police fees for the academy, for that overtime that's worked, is a consistent revenue item each year. Reimbursements for MLD's people if they've been out of state, helping on a recovery basis, that would credit against the cost. Those kind of things can be measured differently.
Okay.
In our 5-year plan, we asked the Chamberlain and the mayor to provide us with details on pinch points, I'll call them, where we know there are challenges such as healthcare, and Mr. Marks has done that for us. So maybe we can do a similar type of monthly analysis for overtime to see where it's going, and I think primarily to compare. We predicted that we would save a tremendous amount of money by reorganizing last July, I think it was, and one way to compare the overtime is, does that bump up against the savings that we achieved in reorganizing? Well, yes, of course it does. But was it still a good move for the city to reorganize? I think at this point we could say financially, yes, it was a good move because of the savings in payroll. So, but let's monitor that going forward.
I mean, I guess to kind of put it in perspective, we're going halfway through the year, and we've spent two-thirds of our overtime budget halfway through the year.
Yes. Okay. Any other, I guess we've moved in, without me actually announcing it, we've moved into the old business, new business phase of the meeting. So does anybody have either old business or new business? Other old business?
I would ask, I think in the beginning of these committees, where we were asking for reports from the assessment department, and we've yet to receive, do we have any communication with the assessment?
We've had one report from them, Dale, and I haven't brought it to you, and I will make a point to do that next month. And as a matter of fact, I will ask for an updated report to take us through half the year. To see
I don't know what would be in it, but I'd like to see it so I would know what to
I would too.
expect. Okay, all
I
right.
would too.
Just to see what our relationship is. Okay.
I can tell you anecdotally that the savings we're receiving are actually even larger than anticipated. Mr. Zerlo was pleased to report to me a couple of weeks ago. And the quality of the work that we're receiving, we're incredibly happy. We obviously have to work closely with their assessment person, and we feel the city is being incredibly well served too.
Okay.
I guess I have another question for you, Richard. Have we received any information yet from the county regarding sales tax? Because I understand actually sales tax revenue is up over their projections because obviously the price of gas going up. Have we?
Haven't gotten anything from them
I think it's not only price, I guess I understand, MLD has a sales tax for the electric charge.
Commercial.
And our Bitcoin operators, I calculate just roughly, are probably contributing $30,000 or $40,000 as additional sales tax revenue that didn't exist in the county before, which is also a good chunk of how much they're over. So it's not just fuel oil prices, it's cities' Bitcoin operations are making a huge contribution to that increase.
We are definitely ahead on what we collected over last year. I think it was 41,000 based on the first quarter's collections. So, get some more information on that.
Thank you.
Any other new business? Okay. Motion to adjourn by,
So moved.
seconded by Councilor Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
I'd like to call the work session for tonight's council to order. It's an opportunity for us to extend any additional time on any items in the agenda, and we can also use it for executive session. An item that I'd entertain for executive session, a matter of purchase of real property for which a public discussion prematurely probably affect the valuation.
Okay. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This shouldn't be a particularly long executive session.
Go ahead. Just go ahead.
You're on vacation again? Where are those places?
Just like state-run foster care facilities.
Billy Jones didn't know of any.
He didn't have like a county by county breakdown.
So they're trying to be kidding.
No, they're being sent across the border, planes
President, you signed this.
Yeah, he really is.
Collections out. Other ones. And then look at what we have left.
I had a couple that were pretty high quality, which is a good thing, but also. I think that one should be more professional first, because I think it's gonna be easier to pick between. I think a grade everything was higher than they did, they still kind of were all sure. Yeah.
So I want to make that.
I picked some questions for there, it's pretty much just here, and I'm looking at stuff, so I'm more thinking against. But it's really just kind of like breaking it down. And a lot of these are just the answers are like the conversations we have with them. Yeah, because like, they don't realize when we yeah, so that's not really expected to take like studios and all that, we just kind of get a feel, and it's less about what they do, it's more kind of how can be stressed for like, and it's really just framing, it's a lot of questions I think it's more just about, because we have things like how they set the rates, why they set the rates. But like, I'm more interested like why they set it, how they set it up, what the steps they did to stay involved, because like that's really, that's our big thing. Yeah, so, and then other stuff that's I think it's the studies are too big to really get a grasp on, like, 100 page, 6 page, they hire themselves, and for me, it's so. I will say there are public outreach, I can see what was done, they said, I think that was 60. What's out there, weird, so definitely it's gonna be, but it's different, it's fine with me, they're because everything is saying, we're trying different things, so, and they need to do things. Yeah, so a lot of it's more generic, and I expect
But at least that.
each person's gonna have this deal, and I'm expecting all these things to be checked off. Really, the only thing that we can really bring is thinking about how to apply stuff, seeing how we make sure that. So, a lot of it there, but talking about how people react to angry parts. That's Plattsburgh, it's a no-go. You're all more people, they're designed for them.
The money that you put out for something that they're reimbursing?
Before. How do we get in on that?
Yeah, that's right. Did you cash that?
Information benefits. She worked by some of that platform. Well, that's it. $1,500 that's supposed to go to the provider. Now, we should go to $1,700. I said to my, either got the old insurance card or they got a coding file on that doctor. Provided we went to a new provider. He just texted his insurance card, and you can tell that's an old car. She's not the number because your sister's still in there. She's 28. So she's 2 years old. Pretty sure that's the going into people's. Pretty bad.
Yeah.
That fell forward that information. Monument. He's been after us for a while.
You told me, you,
But you can't validate.
you said you can. From the 1800s or 1500s.
Okay. Thanks, sir. You're jumping this color up here
I
first.
tried to say it in a nice way, that, I don't know how long, or how far back they wanted to go.
Some are back. First go for 60. Our charity, dig.
Then he says, well, just leave it there. You got to keep like a horse. When you pull it, like.
If you send those planning board applications over there,
Well, then I told him that we did was fire all that themselves. They make things, yeah. Yeah, it's not, we can't tell them. Yeah, it was like, it was all the things like that.
What's that?
It's crazy enough.
never heard that before.
Nope. Never.
Was there?
There's 5 of them.
What? Wait, well, my job's off. Oh, you're it's a quarter.
Is there?
Put it on a old base marina.
Oh, they had 5. You're going up in the sweat lodge?
No, old base marina.
Yeah, I mean, that was discussed when
When
we
was it?
first bought them.
And that's
There was a notion in the 40 I don't know how it works there.
I think a couple months ago I ran through.
Yeah, he wants one.
Should be. I don't know why.
Well, that's.
Because of the, like, you know, my house is right there.
I'm pretty sure OGS would be very upset about that.
There's a line down there. We'll find what it is.
Yes.
And we have to pull it up.
Cars?
One was from the office.
Oh, you didn't want to.
Right. So we'll get there now, it's all not tomorrow, I'll go down with it. And then I'm offering this recommendation. Well, whatever.
I think that's a good question. Tell everybody how to work.
Council chambers. There wasn't someone in here. It was 4 months. And there was one.
Last year was skunks. Yeah, they were saying that because they drag their cars straight up the dirt.
Like, weird something.
Did you know that kid?
That was one from here.
Right, right.
They
No,
keep,
he had it for.
Mike, your mom was mad that it wasn't.
I wasn't mad.
No, it's all 1 year.
So we'll still take it. And there's 5 calls. Something else called that.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. They were broken.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
If I don't pick up right away, I don't. It never gives me a.
So what did you do?
What did I do?
I gotta take the story.
No, seriously, like 4 hours a day, I was kayak is always the same. My bus. And when I went to take it away, I just turned sideways. And the flips are
Now, I'm guessing that the cars are
Wasn't it super? What's his business? He's right there by, so you down in your own school? Yeah. You come in, inlet right there. That's not building. Yeah, nothing like that before.
But nothing really came off. Feet, set up.
That's a big gun. 2 miles from inlet, and sort of. What's that? Go the wrong way? That's just far enough. Don't say no. I just figured your top on your side. And then I realized that there's a pattern to my adjustments. That's gonna work really self-release. You know, so I'm like, shit, I gotta put the phone in. There's like 2 spots in the whole area. It's hard to say because you get 50 feet.
If you really have to do, you have to do something like that. You really have to do it.
But it's nice to tell it goes down, so he's scared to chill. They go running. Yes, they just don't get ready to try
Mary Ellen's here. She's here for some reason. Yes.
It shoots far. 50 feet is a piece of shot.
Yeah. Never showed her.
So they got so soft. Put them in, she's
She said, there's one person.
yeah. That's what he sleeps too.
Yeah.
Just shoot a dog. No, not rabbits. I can kill him. Those are easy. Water bucket. Yeah. Bird seed. Yeah. Because they don't know the smoke. They got that. Have a nice leg, guys. Nice leg. It's weird. And then we have a basic. I'll be back tomorrow.
The only reason I think is they would want to get away from South Platte Street.
What's your problem?
They're still using that.
Damn bird feeders. Big blue trees or anything like that.
What's going on? You know how they have maxed out on South Platte Street? Slack. There's questions about, is it gonna be like,
My house was here, they put an addition on this deck here. And I was in a tier 11 house, we put a bedroom, they put
Jim, we can't see
the house. So this.
well, you could. Why make it that? Tell you.
That's as bad as.
It can be. They can. Yeah.
Just one?
Just one.
Well, they do this. They, steps out. To one
Try to get the right seat this time. We're returning from an executive session where we discussed the the acquiring of property. No decisions were made. Is there any other items in work session you'd like to take up before we momentarily begin the common council meeting? Seeing none, let's begin the common council meeting. Pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Counselor Armstrong?
Here.
Counselor Kelly?
Here.
Counselor Gallo?
Here.
Counselor Ensel?
Here.
Counselor McFarland?
Here.
Counselor Kretzer?
Just a few comments. I think just a few moments ago, the weigh-in for the FLW fishing tournament probably got completed for today. Thank all the staff that worked incredibly hard for an event that's going to be continuing for the next couple of days, but is going along very successfully. This, I understand, is the largest FLW tournament they've ever had in the city of Plattsburgh. It's even exceeded their expectations. As you know, we're staging as much of it as we possibly can down on the Dock Street at the public marina. And we've truly created a public marina aspect to it, thanks to the help of DPW and John Tiquette and the rec department. They put a couple of other fingers in, a really nice setup, and we'll obviously try to perfect and improve that as we go. Other great news is the beach was open today. Full complement of staff. Of course, you know, until it gets busier down there, we'll only be operating from 11 to 7 for swimming, and then extended hours for other activities as well. And then as more kids get released from school and there's more vacationers down here, we'll be expanding those hours. But Matt and his crew did an amazing job in getting all the staffing and resources together, and really cleaned up the beach. Just in the last couple of days, the transformation down there was incredible, to the point where we had somebody comment and send us a memo yesterday or the day before with all these things that he felt we really need to address on the beach. And not unlike some memos we get once in a while in our office. And he wrote another memo, an email to us today, thanking us for all the work, and he can't believe what a transformation would have been. He kind of said, I think I'm eating crow a little bit now, if I recall his words, but it really looks nice down there, and I know how much work you all put in to doing that, so thank you all very much.
Mayor, am I to understand then we do have a full complement of lifeguards?
We do. I think we're up to, including the ones that are just going through their final training, up to 8 or 9 right now. And there's still another couple that are interested in joining us as well, so yeah. Yeah, fully staffed.
Great.
Are we having more certification courses coming up? Or?
Not to my knowledge, though some of the calls I've been getting about lifeguards wanting to work at the beach, they already have their certifications, they just either weren't aware or they're high school students and they've been in school until now.
Very good.
Good. Thank you.
I think last week Tara Powers reported to you on some of her activities. The Mayor's Cup Week is coming along amazingly. I think we have more bands. I think we're up to 11 bands that are going to be performing that week. Really great parade. Everything's really coming into place there too. I mentioned last week that, and you see on your agenda, you're approving tonight the go-ahead for a couple of major road building projects. As you know, our strategy is to do a combination of major road building, as we're doing on Main Road this year, and also a lot more mill and fill. And I think I added up to close to 3 miles of road building and road repair this year, which compares to about 0.2 miles slated for completion last year. So they're really ratcheting it up too. And I know that DPW was working incredibly hard. You know, they kind of came up with the schedule, and gotta be careful what you wish for, you just might get it. But they're doing an amazing job putting all that together as well, with a lot of ingenuity and creativity. And we are looking to hire, just completing the hiring of a new clerk of the works to oversee this, as you know. And we're talking about hiring a drafts person as well, just because of the additional range of stuff we're now starting to do in-house. They need those resources. They've identified some people to do it, and we're either completing or in the process of completing those hires in the near future too. So thank you all. I know how much work it's been to put all this together, but I think you really, by the end of this construction season, going to hear a lot of real rave reviews from the public. I mentioned that, by the way, on the Monday with the Mayor show. I mentioned that we're going to do Broad Street this year and South Peru, which has been delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed so many times in the past. And I went through the various lists of the main road, and I think I even said we're going to try to get to that really bad stretch on Cornelia Street. And sure enough, just as the show finished, somebody called up just as we went off air saying, well, what about Veterans Lane? And I wasn't on the air anymore, but I go, oh yeah, that one too. We're getting the Veterans Lane as well. So I think all the ones that you've been hearing from your constituents an awful lot about are being addressed, and I'm sure they're going to have a equally innovative plan for next year as well, discussed with us as we start formulating our capital plan over the next few months as well. So took an awful lot of work, but I think we're really going to see some signs of road improvement this year. That's pretty exciting for me. Councillor Dowd?
Can I just ask, are potholes still being filled?
Yes.
They are, okay. Is that complaint driven or by your observation or?
Observation.
Okay.
And if we get complaint too, it's a combination.
Okay.
Well, thank you. That's all I've got to add.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on June 14th, 2018 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councillor Ansel, second by Councillor Armstrong. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending June 20th, 2018 in the amount of $501,041.38 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councillor Dowell, second by Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah.
Maybe your hand wasn't. Sorry. Councillor Kelly.
Okay.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. You have in your packet a couple of reports, of which I think you referred to a little bit in the meeting we just completed moments ago. Are there any other additional committee reports? Councillor Armstrong on behalf of Councillor Kretzer and Governance?
Nope.
City Infrastructure, Councillor Ansel.
Just basically, we met last week and discussed a number of things. And as you mentioned, the big piece is the repaving of Broad, Veterans Lane, South Peru, certainly the work at Main Road, and hopefully, with fingers crossed, that stretch of Cornelia.
And Broad Street.
I said Broad.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you. Anything else?
No.
Finance and Budget, Councillor Kelly. Yes, we held our monthly meeting earlier this afternoon, and about the only thing that came up that needs attention is Councillor Ansel, I believe, brought up the issue of overtime. So we're going to monitor that a little more closely and see how that impacts the savings we anticipated in our reorganization from last year. Just to watch it and create a metric for it and make sure it reflects in our 5-year plan if necessary.
And I believe the Public Safety Department has a report to us, give a little bit of analysis of how the overtime is actually offset by also reductions in traditional regular payroll and benefits as well.
That'd be helpful as well, absolutely.
And for the public, we did talk a little bit about our recent state audit numbers. That will be coming out officially from the state next couple of months. As you know, last year was going to be a very difficult year financially for us. It turned out to be. Our stress index will go up, no doubt, this year. But we're looking forward to starting to turn that around in the upcoming years based on your hard work. Anything else? Public Safety, Councillor Dowell?
Well, my thunder's been stolen. We're going to talk about overtime next week. It's probably going to be a one topic or one agenda meeting by the looks of things. I'm sure we'll add a couple things, but.
Public Library, Councillor Armstrong?
There's a board meeting next week, and I will report out at my assigned time.
And MLD, Councillor McFarland?
Yes, we have an upcoming MLD board, which will be next week. There's even talk of holding it before the council meeting, which is pretty riveting, so maybe you guys will see some of that. But I'll have a more update next week.
Thank you. Resolved, the reports as listed are hereby ordered, received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Ansel, and second by Councilor McFarland. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No correspondences or board recommendations at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bills honored by the common council for the week ending June 22nd, 2018 in the amount of $868,905.32 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is the opportunity for the public to come and address the council on any items that are on the agenda. Another public comment period for other items at the end. So please come forward for agenda items only at this time. There is a 5-minute time limit. Seeing none, let's continue. Thank you.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves a request from the Assistant Superintendent of Public Works to revise the 2018 capital expenditure plan by reducing the planned spending for the South Crew Street Road rehabilitation from
I make a motion to-
$460,000 to $190,000.
Make a motion to have all of the resolutions 7A, B, and C combined.
And do you want to move the motion and waive the reading?
Yes,
Okay. Those were covered in your meeting.
in the Finance
Right.
Committee meeting.
Second, Councilor Armstrong. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion on the actual resolutions A through C. Hearing none and knowing that you discussed them in your committee, roll call.
Councilor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Dowdle?
Yes.
Councilor Ansel?
Yes.
Councilor McFarland?
Yes.
No probable request at this time.
Be ordained by the common council of the city of Plattsburgh as follows. An ordinance made pursuant to section 241-3-5 of the city code of the city of Plattsburgh, authorizing the sale of tax foreclosed property to the recorded owner. The city of Plattsburgh common council hereby ordains that the real property located at 43 Standish Street in the city of Plattsburgh, tax map number 221.7-4-44, which was deeded to the city subsequent to a decision in order by Clinton County Court Judge Keith Bruno dated May 14th, 2018 under RJI number 09-0-2018-004, which decision in order granted the city's motion made pursuant to Article 11 of the real property tax law may be sold back to Beth Gibo, the prior recorded owner of 43 Standish Street under the following terms. Within 10 days of adoption of this ordinance, Ms. Gibo shall deliver a non-refundable fee in certified funds in the amount of $300 to the city chamberlain. Then within 90 days of the adoption of this ordinance, Ms. Gibo shall deliver the purchase price in the amount of $12,906.34 to the city chamberlain. The purchase price shall include $10,728.49, which represents the unpaid real property taxes, interest, and penalties levied against the subject owned property, $0, which represents any outstanding utility or refuse bill in the name of Ms. Gibo, $805, which represents the legal costs and expenses incurred by the city in connection with the foreclosure of the tax lien and reconveyance of the subject real property, and $1,072.85, which represents the auction company's redemption repurchase fee and $300 fee for advertising services associated with this property, for a total purchase price of $12,906.34. Upon receipt of the total purchase price and certified funds, the city shall deliver to Ms. Gibo a quitclaim deed and other conveyance documents to be recorded by Ms. Gibo at her expense. Resolved that this ordinance shall take effect immediately upon approval by the mayor and publication of the ordinance or a summary thereof one time in the official newspaper of the city of Plattsburgh.
Moved by Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor McFarland. Discussion? Roll call?
Councilor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Dowdle?
Yes.
Councilor Ansel?
Yes.
Councilor McFarland?
Yes.
Are there any items for initial consideration tonight? New business and councilor reports.
Yes. Please. I'd like to introduce local law P 5 of the year 2008, amending and renaming and restating its entirety, Chapter 161, Article 3, Sections 14-15 of the City Code of the City of Plattsburgh. And I would like to call for a public hearing on July 5th, 2018 at 5 p.m. And here is a copy of such. Pass this down. Go.
That goes to Patrick.
Patrick.
Go.
That one on the left-hand side goes down to Patrick.
Oh, okay.
Would you like to summarize for us?
Basically, what this is doing is it's taking this local law, there's going to be a language addition. It'll be amended and restated as pigeons, feral cats, and other animals.
Okay, and then it has to do with feeding and ownership?
It has to do with the nuisance declared and also the harboring, keeping, or feeding pigeons, feral cats, or other animals unlawful.
So this time, all you're doing is requesting, announcing a public hearing
Yes.
2 weeks hence at 5 p.m.
The 2-week time, yes, which will be, put us to July 5th at 5 p.m.
Does the council wish any further discussion at this time on this? Any other new business? Councilor McFarland?
Yes, I would put forth a resolution, resolve the Common Council of the City of Plattsburgh authorizes the mayor to sign a purchase and sale agreement in the form approved by the Corporation Council between the City of Plattsburgh and Regurgin LLC for the real property identified as tax map parcel number 220.4-31.1 with a deposit and purchase price to be made by the MLD.
Is there a seconder? Councilor Armstrong? Discussion.
Well, so we need to, so this is under new business, so probably should have been under an initial consideration.
Initial
We
consideration.
should vote Rule 4 if we want to adopt
There
it.
you go. I move to invoke Rule 4.
Second.
I second.
Councilor McFarland? Discussion, are all in favor of invoking Rule 4?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion on the item itself? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gallo?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Any
other new business or council reports? Councilor Ensel?
I just have a question. I guess, Matt, this might go to you because I had a lot of texts and calls on Tuesday. I guess there was an issue at South Acres with one of the baseball games that was scheduled there that I don't know if you have a schedule of all the games or what have you, but I guess there was the players got there and the condition of the field was unplayable. There were still puddles and things, and I was getting texts and calls. They're pretty upset.
Okay, which part was it?
South Acres.
That's the first I've heard of that, but I will certainly look into it.
Okay, thank you.
So they were unable to play?
Well, they actually, they ended up playing, but I think the game was supposed to start at 6 o'clock, but they got there and there were puddles all over, so they ended up
Okay.
working on the field, and I think the game got started about 6:45 or so.
This is a Little League?
No, it was CVBL,
Oh, CVBL.
What is that?
Champlain Valley Baseball League.
And they pay to use,
I believe they do pay, they do have a fee, a field.
or we charge
fee.
them a fee.
We
to
charge
use
them a
the
fee for using.
All right,
I'm not absolutely certain of that, but I believe we do.
okay.
Any other new business or council reports?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Mayor, in your weekly comments, you were talking about the streets we're repaving this year, and I think one of our councilors mentioned there are certain streets we keep pushing off, and one of those streets is Pine Street, and the section of Pine Street adjacent to the Saranac River Trail is in fine shape. It was resurfaced a few years ago, but there's one block of Pine Street that's, I would challenge you to find a worse street anywhere in the city except for maybe Veterans Lane. So if there are funds left over in our paving budget for this year, I would request that we take a close look at that one block of Pine Street. And I see Andrew has his hand up there, so maybe he's got some.
That's actually scheduled as part of Saranac River Trail Phase 2. So
Oh,
yes.
that is encompassed in not only the trail, but they will actually be doing that section of the road as well.
So the funds for that will come out of the Saranac River Trail project?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, good to know. Thank you, Andrew.
If we want phase 2.
My car thanks you as well.
How much in funds do we have in the phase 2 of the
I'm
River
not sure
Trail
of those
Saranac?
details.
Yeah, we needed to, I think that came up last week,
Yeah, it
and
did.
we were, I forgot, I'm sorry, that we had asked for some more details, and the mayor had pointed out that we hadn't planned for funds, and so we need to make a point of doing the analysis so we know how to proceed.
I wonder if we could fit that into the next governance strategy and city operations meeting. Would that fit,
Say that's
Michelle?
like in 2 weeks?
Could it be infrastructure? I don't know.
Well, it should be infrastructure, but, I mean, it's, we could take it up in new business, old business, we can fit in it, but we
Okay.
just need to set a time.
That won't be until 3 weeks out.
Yeah,
If you
so
wanna-
it probably needs to be discussed as soon as possible, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, we've got some phone calls out.
Yeah. I mean, that, I just held a town hall with the Plattsburgh Housing Authority, and that was a question that came up too.
I think the binding constraint with that is not necessarily even the budget, it's just the capacity of the crews to get this much done. As you know, they're doing a lot more in-house,
You mean with regard to the street?
right?
I'm talking about the bridge, yeah.
Any other council reports or new items? Seeing none, this is an opportunity for any individuals of the public to please come and address the council. Mr. Downs? Please state your name, address, and
Yes.
5 minutes.
I'm Jack Downs. I live at 96 Oak Street. I'm here to represent the community garden, of which I'm co-chair. And I'll just speak briefly to tell you that, remind you that the community garden has a 60-plot garden in Melissa L. Penfield Park. The 60 plots there, we have a small garden on South Catherine Street from the Housing Authority. In our large garden in Penfield Park, 60 plots, they're mostly tended by couples, families, civic groups, church groups. So it actually represents a lot more than 60 people. There's probably a couple hundred people involved in the garden there. And it's all done by volunteers. And most people are planting and growing for their own use, and then some people are planting and growing for the food shelf. They're done it as a club or a group or something like that. 99% at least, I'm sure, of those people, those couple hundred people, enjoy the park and the garden and do it without any friction, problems, or interpersonal problems or anything. But you may become aware lately of one gardener, perhaps with some involvement of a couple other gardeners, in a personal conflict with a pedestrian, which of course involved cars driving in, cars parking. I want to let you know that we know about that, and we're hoping to address it. Although it seemed like the flashpoint for this was really, I think, a personal disagreement, was the cars and the driving or the parking. We've come later, as that disagreement has continued and doesn't involve cars or parking anymore. I think there's more of a personal conflict there. However, I want to let you know that we do not endorse or support conflict of any kind with the neighbors, the pedestrians, the non-gardeners, between gardeners and non-gardeners. In fact, it's very common. Most days that we're there, we'll have people wander through the garden, and I invite any and all of you to certainly come visit. It's a good time of year to visit. Things are really growing like crazy now, and it's interesting to see all the different techniques and plants and so on that people are doing there. So we wanted to make sure that you knew that this personal conflict doesn't represent the garden at all. We do not endorse it in any way. And I want to let you know what we've done about this. First via email and Facebook with all our members, and then this Saturday we have a work day, and I'll do it in person. We're trying to educate the members, remind them that that there's supposed to be no driving there. We have, some people have driven only extremely rarely when they have a very large amount of supplies or equipment, which is actually the practice of the baseball groups there also. They will drive when they have a lot of supplies or equipment. But if anybody does, we're telling them it should be extremely rare, and it should simply be a drive-in, drop-off, obviously carefully, and then go out and park outside. I think that it is possible that sort of policy or suggestion of ours was maybe somewhat overlooked by a few people. So we really try to educate people about that and tell them, first of all, just don't drive. If you really think you have to, it should be extremely rare. And I mean, we have to get compost delivered. So that would be like a once a season thing, or we have to have our refuse pile removed. That's a once a season thing. And I've reached out to the pedestrian involved and apologized via email. And one of the garden's other co-chairs met and talked with him and apologized also. I think we had a productive conversation there. And we are working on a code of conduct for our gardeners to make sure that everybody understands about manners and politeness, and if things ever do become contentious, they should definitely not they should walk away. They should not encourage this kind of behavior. We don't want to encourage this kind of behavior. So that is something we're working on. I've heard suggestions that there might be some movement for some prohibitions or bans or changes or whatever, but we really hope that that not be done, that we give a little patience to try to hope we can solve things ourselves. And I want to let you know that if you have any questions or concerns about the garden, I'm available. My contact information is on our garden website or our Facebook site, certainly, or look me up in the book. I'm happy to talk to anybody about the garden at any time, or here tonight if you wish.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Any other individuals please like to come up and address the council?
Hello, I'm Danielle Erb. I just wanted to do a quick update on behalf of Strong Towns Plattsburgh. We have completed our report on the results that we have been able to get which we did get from the city, and we're very happy about that. We're still waiting on our response to the FOIL that we submitted to the state. So our first attempt was rejected, so we're trying to resubmit both to I'm gonna mess this up now. The supervising, not EDC, Economic Development.
Empire State Development?
Empire State Development, yeah. And then also to the Department of State. So I encourage you all to go to our website. We have a website now, and it's www.strongtownsplattsburgh.com. The report is posted there, and you can read through it. It's a in-depth analysis of all the information that we were able to access. This is analysis that we believe should have been done prior to the selection of projects, which the data and the analysis wasn't done for the local planning committee in this form. So we also want to make sure that you guys sort of see us as more of a partner. We want to be a resource for the city and help to help with projects that the community supports, regardless of our disagreements on other things. Durkee Street project, we don't support that in its current form and timelines that we've seen. We also would like to get an update on whether or not there will be another public forum. We were told that there would be, so Any information on that would be helpful. I also had requested information on the public advisory committees that were supposed to be formed for each the Durkee Street and the Dock Street projects. I don't know where those stand, if they have been formed already, but I would ask that the city make that process public, and whenever they are formed, have we had an update on whether they have been formed or not? I don't know. They have not been. Okay, so I would just ask that that be publicly posted in the paper or.
Excuse me, Matt, do you mind, just because if I'd thought of it, I might have asked you for an update. I understand you've got an advisory committee about what consultant to hire regarding.
Yeah, that's the proposal review committee.
Right.
The advisory committee is more long-term in terms of steering the project one direction or another, and those haven't been formed yet.
Right.
So when that does happen, when it comes up in advance of
Of
that,
course.
I would just ask that that be posted publicly in, the paper or on
Great idea.
on the city website, so that the public is aware of how they can be allowed with that. Also, and on another completely different subject, I just want to say thank you, Mike Kelly, for bringing up the condition of the streets on Pine Street. I do live on Pine Street. But I also did want to say just the interior roads of the flats also are horrendous. I would say worse than Pine Street itself. If you've ever been down Water Alley, there's barely road left. You could really just go and shovel it up off the street. So I don't know where that falls on, the list of priorities. Yeah. But it's really bad in there, in the interior. A lot of people do drive around Pine Street, and it looks nice with the walk, the river trail and everything now. I love it, but the interior roads really need some help. So
If I'm correct on this, I think that was the city's first experiment in something called mill and fill, which we're working with now. Those streets, as I understand it, Michael, were done in the mill and fill technique, but it was many, many years ago.
Yes.
And maybe it's time to look at it again.
I've got it down.
And it may also be a good indicator for us on how long does a mill and fill last.
it's a very old part of town.
Yes.
So.
We'll see when they did the program last.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe those
Thank you,
people
Danielle.
on the infrastructure committee could also make a note. I understand there is a new mechanism in place to make decisions about what needs to be done in terms of paving. We used to get a report, I think. So at the next infrastructure committee meeting, if we could just get debriefed about how the priorities are set and so forth, and what criteria are used.
There is one thing I'd like to say about the streets that were chosen this year. It makes a heck of a lot of sense to pave or refinish the streets that are most traveled. And that seems to be the effort this year. So, the big ones like South Peru Street and Broad Street and Cornelia Street, and even Veterans Lane during the daytime. Those are heavily traveled streets, so they got the priority this year.
Broad.
But hopefully, like you say, those side streets, less traveled streets will get the did I leave out Broad? Okay, Broad Street as well. So those are big ones, but hopefully in future years, those smaller feeder streets will get.
There's also a lot of Waterhouse Street, Waterhouse, sorry, Walworth.
Walworth,
There's no sidewalks, on
Right.
one side.
Right.
So I don't know if that's something that, make those streets more walkable, like with sidewalks and.
Yeah. To our Public Works Department's credit, they are trying to step up the number of streets that we pave every year. This year it's almost 3. So in previous years we were down to as low as 0.2 in a year. So tremendous efforts being made by that department to make sure that those numbers go up. And then when you do that, then you have sort of a maintenance schedule. So every 20 years, approximately, every street in the city gets repaved, and that's how it should be. So we're getting there.
I'd like to second that, Mike, the work of the DPW, especially considering the amount of paving that is taking place with the resources that we have.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Any other members of the public, please come and address the council.
Hi, my name is Marisha Harmon. I reside at Adirondack Lane, Plattsburgh, New York. And I'd like to address, I'm a previous vendor at the Plattsburgh City Beach. Came to the Plattsburgh City Beach in 2015. I spoke with a gentleman early this year in February. I was trying to get a hold of somebody who was going to be responsible for the beach to kind of touch base because there have been so many changes within the city government. And I spoke to one gentleman, and then I was able to get a hold of Ms. Geddes. So on March 23rd of this year, Ms. Geddes provided me with my license agreement to return to the Plattsburgh City Beach. But I've been since told I can't return. So I'm just looking for some clarity with this issue. I had to speak to
By
Mr.
whom
Dowdle.
were you told you cannot return?
Mr. Miller.
So
So-
from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were offered a license earlier in the year
Yes, March
by Ms.
23rd. I
Geddes.
was off. So on March 23rd, when she said, okay, go ahead, I purchased all of my inventory
And
and did
reliance
everything
that.
I needed to do to open for the beach this year. So I've spent all of this money in preparation for this season, and then I'm being told, wait, you can't open. So it's problematic.
I think given that you've got a certain reliance interest on that and went and purchased materials, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the right thing for the city to do is to honor that commitment. I also need to be cautious in stating that the individual didn't have the authority to offer that contract, but that doesn't make any difference to you. You relied on that, you couldn't have known that, and you relied on that for purchases. So from my perspective, if you all concur, I think the city needs to do the right thing and honor that.
Can I ask what type of vendor?
Oh, I have like a beach shop, so anything you need for a day at the beach, suntan lotion, sunscreen, beach umbrellas, beach chairs, ice cream.
Ice cream.
So, yeah, it's important. So just if you went to the beach and you had nothing, you
Yeah.
can find everything you need at my shop.
Do we have space available at the city beach currently?
So this would require council action to authorize any license agreement in general, so it was apparently an oversight and a lapse by the previous city employee by extending that offer without council approval. So one way or the other, council would have to act.
Can that be done just through a motion at this point now? Or?
Do we have a copy of the license agreement?
There was one presented from Sandra Geddes back in March. I'd want to look it over, put some eyes on it again to make sure. But certainly it would be possible to do kind of an on-the-fly resolution if the other prerogative.
We can make a motion
I would
contingent
appreciate
upon
that.
review of the licensing agreement.
Instruct the mayor to sign a contract.
Can we get a time frame because the beach opened today and every day I'm closed is a day I'm losing money.
Could we do this tonight?
Sure. So it would be a resolution to authorize the mayor to sign a license agreement to allow Marisha Harmon.
Yes, Queen Beach is the
Queen
LLC.
Beach to locate in vendor space D.
I believe so.
Which would require prepayment in full of the license term.
Correct.
What he said. I move.
Contingent upon approval of the
In a form approved by Corporation Council.
Corporation Council.
Now, the locks on your,
I need access. So I had been in there earlier this year, and when I returned, they had changed the locks because I need to go and have quite an amount of cleaning from winter that I'll need to do. So the sooner I can get in and start cleaning, that would be great.
okay, so who would the contact person be after tonight? I'm not asking you. Who would she contact? Would
Beach
you
manager presumably, huh?
Okay, and what's the mode of contact for the beach manager?
I can give Ms. Harmon his contact info.
I'll second, Michelle, Rochelle, you
Yeah, I think
made the motion, and I'll second it.
you made a note of the resolution, Ms. Carlin. Okay. Thank you.
So we have a motion, and do we have a second to the council council discussion?
And why was she told no before? Was there a problem with the vending, or?
I've never really been given transparency about that. I've never received any documentation, letter, or anything stating exactly why.
I think the most compelling, though, is that you were given a representation by a then city employee, and I think Councilor Dowell, you also followed up with her as well. I think given these representations to you, I think we just need to honor that.
But your first contact was with the community developer of January, correct?
Yeah, it was January, February. Mr.
Dominicus.
D. Dominicus.
Yeah, Mr. Dominicus is who I spoke to initially.
And
then once he resigned, I spoke with Ms. Geddes.
Okay.
Okay.
And how much is the license for?
It's 4 installments of $200, so it's $200 a month for $200 for June, $200 July, $200 August, $200 September. But at this point, it should probably be prorated since I haven't had use of the premises.
Well, yeah, exactly. You shouldn't pay for all of June.
Well, it just opened today.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So that
But
would be,
my license agreement said June 1st of
Yeah.
2018, but I didn't even have keys.
right.
Okay.
But by the looks of the beach during the past couple of weeks, you'd never know it was closed.
Yeah, I know,
It was
it's been there.
being well used.
Dean said
Dean,
something
can
about
we-
payment up front.
Right, he did.
Can we amend that for $200 for the months of July, August, and September?
Yeah, I think it was subject to the final review of the contract itself,
Right.
so I don't know if we would need to necessarily make that amendment.
Okay.
I think the general concept is to have a prepayment.
Okay,
to
because
authorize
it
license.
hadn't been approved for June anyway.
And we'll obviously tighten up our procedures in the future. They already are being tightened up in the contracting, so no such false representations could be made in the future that you would then rely on, so we apologize for that.
But the vendor who's there now, did he use the same channels of approval?
We approved that several weeks ago. That was the
Right,
bar.
but did that individual also contact the same individual she did previously, or do we know?
Reviewed the contract. That's the extent of my
Okay.
involvement. So.
I did have an individual, and this isn't quite touching on what we're discussing, but picked up their beach passes today up at the town hall and said it's quite a different procedure. They seem to think there's quite a check and balance system in place.
How do you mean? I don't understand.
He had to sign off on 2 passes, submit his license plate number, quite a few procedures that he said he's been getting a beach pass for years, and he's never had to do that until
At
now.
the town?
At the town?
We've always had the same procedure each year. We send a whole slew of passes up to the town, and they administer it as they see appropriate. We've never changed our procedures.
Okay.
And always get them to the town months in advance.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think we still need to vote on this.
We need to vote on it, right.
We've had a first
You don't
and a
have to.
second.
That's okay.
Yeah, we know what your vote would be. Okay.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
I'll abstain.
Are there any other new business or council reports? No other comments from the public? Seeing none, then do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Ansel, second by Councilor Dowdle. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Thank you, folks.
We need a name somewhere on here.
Thanks for that.
Yours or somebody put their name on it. Hi.
You can have mine if you want. Elizabeth.
You done with those green sheets, folks?
You have 10 more seconds to look at it. Remember, I authorize
Okay.
anything.
Oh, you're not doing it?
So you can have it.
So
Yeah.
what, why? I guess, why?
Well, there were some discussions brought forth, some residents came forth about 6 weeks ago.
Played yesterday.
With concerns about
Played
cat
the
colonies
barracks.
as well as the individual feeding of feral animals and abandoned cats too. There was a